Hey guys, it's Clint with Bus Stop Studios again, bass player using the Axe-Fx 3. If you were with me last time, I just built on the fly this very basic chain with an SVT type model in it. And this is, let's see, kind of how we ended up. Clean tone. I made a quick scene with a little bit of dirt and one with even more dirt. So we're going to add to this today, and I'll help explain why I stretched this chain out and designed it the way that I did. So again, we might decide that it's time to cover some Nirvana, and I arranged this chain to simulate what I might do with a regular pedal board and put a chorus in here. I quite like this stereo tri-chorus, and so turning this block on, now we are in Nirvana, so we can say, hey, there's a chorus. Now, obviously, tons of options in here, tons of configurability, but one of the reasons why I like arranging these blocks in a certain fashion is it gives me a chance to build out basically a very complex pedal board with space and room to maneuver. So we've got a Nirvana chorus, and you can see as I've added that block in, it ends up being in all of your scenes, which, well, some of them. So you may need to go back in and toggle these into bypass mode. And again, you also want to check to make sure, as we talked about last time with your amp blocks, that if you wanted to get that dirtier amp, whoops, sorry, that's the channel in the chorus. If you wanted to get that dirtier tone with the chorus affecting it, you could decide which amp you're going to use. I think I'll stick with the clean for that chorus tone. So good. Also a note, when you save a preset, whichever scene you save it on will be the default when you come back to it. So even if you leave, and this is actually an option you can configure, but the way Axe-Fx 3 works out of the box, if you come back to the scene, it will go to scene 4 where you saved it. So that's probably not what I want, but there you go. We've got a clean, a dirty, full tilt, and a chorus. So again, this would make a lot of bass players pretty happy with just this kind of functionality. So what I want to do next, actually, is I'm going to take a little diversion from this this preset with the chorus, and I'm actually going to delete the block, and we'll put in a separate guitar chain here. So I'm going to walk you through how I do this. Installing two parametric EQs, another amp block, another cab block, and we'll connect these in a bit. But there's essentially a couple different ways you could get a nice, really driven sound here. So I might add a drive pedal. And what I used to do with a physical pedal board as a bass player is I might take something like a full-tone OCD. This is not exactly the OCD model from what I understand, but it is a full-tone overdrive type model. And install it in my pedal board and to get some drive tones, right? That's really loud now. And one of the things you'll find with that is the OCD is especially famous for this, even though it's one of the better guitar pedals used on bass for drive. Sometimes you get a little bit of your low frequencies sucked out. So you can certainly get some nice driven tones this way in Axe-Fx. A really popular one is the emulation or simulation of a dark glass type pedal. Where are we here? let's see. I may not have that configured correctly. Not sure why that's not as drivey as I was expecting. May need to actually deal with the level here at the amp. There we go. So this dark glass pedal is really, really popular for modern rock, metal for sure. I'm a big fan of it, but I find the Naxx-Effects with all the flexibility I have that rather than this configuration, I get better mileage out of splitting up into a separate chain. So I'm going to walk you through how to do that. If I revert here, perfect. Okay, well, some backtracking to do. So I'm going to put in 2 parametric EQs, as I said before. And I want to use this as opposed to a crossover because I actually might prefer to not just cleanly split the signal down the middle in terms of the frequency bandwidth, and I'll come to that in a minute. But we're going to take our chain and split it up, and one of the easiest things you can do right away, I'm leaving this block blank or empty there for a reason, giving me some space later. One of the things you might want to do straight away is you can come in and instead of using another bass amp model, one of the cool things about the gajillion of guitar amps that are in here is you can sort of pick one of those. So we might do, I'm not a guitar guy, but I have played around a bit. We might pick a Plexi model and then, let's see, I looked at another preset earlier which had an interesting tone on it. So I might pick this cab to go with it, or these 2 cabs to go with it. I think this is lifted straight out of one of Fractal's guitar presets. Okay, so now we have this guitar amp in parallel. I'm just going to pull the level map a bit. One of the things I find helpful when designing these chains is that while you're building them, instead of your bypass mode being through, I just mute at the amp block for both of them. And what that allows you to do is when you bypass it, instead of getting like effectively a DI signal coming through or the cab impulse response, I've just literally pulled the plug on the signal chain here. So this should be just this amp model active now. Just kind of sounds like a bass being played through a guitar amp. And similarly, when I turn on the bass amp, I'm back to my bass only tone. Okay, so this is, and of course with none of them on, I get nothing. So why do I have these parametric EQs? Let me talk through that. What I like to do with this is maybe pick a shelving frequency, and it might be quite low actually, just say 1000 Hertz. And I will just do a 12 dB shelf on the bass amp so that really the tone I'm getting through here now is really, really low end. And you know, you can sort of play with this to your heart's content, right? Similarly, you could do something inverse of that on the top end here and just send high frequency information through the guitar amp. Really trebly, of course, but I want to really pump this gain up and get some interesting stuff going on here. Okay, so if I didn't have this block engaged, I sent full frequency through, you can tell the difference in character, right? It's pretty dramatic. So the 2 of these together, though, has a really pleasing... Whoops, sorry. And what's nice about this is you can now take that level control and you can decide what you want to do with the amount of that guitar amp coming through. You could do that later with volume or other settings to not mess up your amp block, but for this example, I'll just do it right there in the amp block. Parametric EQ, right? So I'm getting rid of that low frequency. I might decide that I actually want some of it, right? So I could easily come in and say, hey, I actually do want to pass some of that low frequency information, get the harmonics from the guitar amp, and effectively double up on some of that stuff. So you can go for that. What I also like to do with a guitar amp is really chop the top end. So you could get just a passing of mid frequencies through and say, hey, let's really chop this off, and then you can experiment with this frequency band that you're sending through. So again, listening to it in isolation. So, not great to listen to by itself, but again, put that low end back in. Yeah, so I really like that tone, and you could shape it further with EQ afterwards. You could do some other tricks. Like, again, you could add, say, reverb block. Excuse me. And, whoops, not 4.5. Could add a little bit, not sure why. 1.5, there we go. So you get some presence from that high end, but not the bass tone waffling around in the reverb and muddying things up too much. So yeah, so that's kind of fun to put in there. Also, again, this is where you can really get nasty with your drive type tones. We'll go back to that same full tone OCD tone. So yeah, that may be a little too intense, but again, you have the option of putting something like that in there. Also, some of these amps, guitar amps, you can hear you get that noise through. You might add a noise gate just on the top, and you can actually play with this quite a bit. So that seems to have taken away the steady state hiss. You could play with the threshold quite a bit, and you could set this so where you're not getting any of that through until you really dig in, to find the right level. But so you could play with that. I'll just use this as a simple noise gate for now. But yeah, this double chaining possibilities where you're running a guitar amp on top of a bass amp are really pretty powerful. One of my favorite things to do is you might decide that what we want here is a pitch block. And I'm going to do a longer video on this because this is really just a quick and dirty approach to this, but you can actually get some really creative possibilities. Let's just do a dual shift. 12 semitones should be an octave. Turn this down, we'll make the full mix go through, and now what we should be doing so this is an octave up now essentially of what I'm playing, and you could blend in varying levels, putting the bass tone back in. You can get very close to that sort of royal blood type sound by running the guitar amp and effects and bass amp, splitting the signal. One of the things I found, that I won't do it today, is that really by manipulating the frequency bands before and after these pitch blocks, you can get rid of some of that artificial, hunky or metallic sounding pitch artifacts. So I think if you listen to just the isolated guitar, it has that little bit of a metallic-y ring to it. So you can be clever with this and get something that sounds more like a guitar. You can also mask some of that with something like a drive pedal in here and before the amp. Again, I can hear that metallic ringiness, but you can sort of tame that a little bit with EQing before and after a pitch block. But all that said, if you're looking just for some interesting tonality that way, you can put that at a lower level and even do sort of a power chord thing here with a fifth above that octave, or another full octave down at lower levels, to get just some interesting, big sounds out of the instrument. I know you're getting bored of minor pentatonics like I am, but this is a good demonstration of sort of that dual guitar block. And again, the possibilities are endless here, but this is just a nice way to get something richer than a straight bass tone out. In a mix situation, would really perhaps cut down the amount of this effect pretty significantly. But again, you might be in one of those groups that only has one guitarist, and you need to provide some richness while somebody's soloing. So there's some incredible possibilities here. So again, hope this gives you an idea of what's possible with a bass guitar and Axe-Fx. Hopefully you see just how easy it is to come in and experiment. I do think that probably right now, although I don't have a ton of experience with it, the Helix is packed with a few more bass models, but the level of fidelity in Axe-Fx appears to be quite good. The models that are in here are all very usable and very flexible, but I think you have to get creative with using guitar effects and interesting chains to really unlock the potential if you're going to be using it for bass. So thanks again for watching. Make sure to hit the subscribe or like button, and we'll see you again next time with something perhaps more contemplated than this quick run through of how to build a chain. So have a good day, guys.